Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Professor Ellen, for inviting me to talk to all the members, and thanks for coming. All right, so today I'm going to talk about adversaries in Second Life. It's an area that I've been more interested. I found there are some things that have not been touched on, even though Second Life, like we say, has been something that has been there for quite some time right now. So a brief, I'm going to talk about me. Maybe some of you might not know who I am. So my name is Victor. I currently work as an assistant professor of cybersecurity in Sweden, an institution called Blekinge Institute of Technology. I'm also visiting research at Colorado State University, and right now I'm an affiliate researcher at CU Boulder, beginning from, we've been in talks with Ellen. So I have a PhD in computer science, and I love collaborative research. So that's an area that I'm more interested and I have proficiency in. So my interests span across application, AI, and cybersecurity. So anything that touches on that, I usually get interested with that. I think you can find more online about what I do. All right, so the agenda of today, I want to discuss about why metaverse is a critical area in security research. Since metaverse was, since it was mentioned, the terminology was mentioned, you find, people have gone way beyond developing applications and coming up with new concepts, and a lot of things have been, posed, and people have just believed that they work, even though I think they need a lot of proofs. But in the area of security, I think I find this interesting because a few years back, I was more interested in trying to investigate crimes in this kind of environments. Like how can I find that you did a crime, and how can I attribute or be able to link the crime to the perpetrator? So since then I've moved to cybersecurity. I want to find if I can prevent these crimes from happening before I can investigate. So both proactive and reactive approaches. Then, with new technologies like AI, generative approaches, so there is quite a lot of changes in terms of adversaries and different ways through which systems work. So I want to see if it's possible for researchers to be able to identify and pinpoint and find if there are new methods adversaries use to compromise these systems and technologies. Then we're going to look at AI in cybersecurity and XR in particular, and then we want to see if this integration brings forth some interesting areas of research and new challenges. Then I'm going to conclude by giving a few strategies on how we can safeguard these environments. So when we talk about metaverse, it's just, we're using it as a tool or a platform. These areas could be more because we know the virtual environments and different immersive environments. I can say the scope is big. So this is just a baseline for that. All right, so most of you, I think, could have watched this movie Avatar. It was like 10 years ago when this movie was out by James Cameron. I didn't know what it was. I was just interested in how things work. I could see a lot of things going on, but I didn't know that this was quite a very interesting area that one day could form a basis of my research or the interest that I had. So for quite some time, these have been, we can say, a frontier in many research because when I look at the future, I feel like we've always relied on different ways of, acknowledging or interpreting system, because what we do, usually we say, we have a new technology in place and we embrace it and we think that's going to change different ways through which we live. But I've been interested on how when we integrate different technologies, we can see the future changing. And one thing I can say, with all these technologies, fusion and integration, new challenges crop in. So the first thing I want to mention is that these technologies have been used as a fall to, act as a replica of what is going on within society. The first thing I want to talk about is the critical infrastructure areas. So protecting critical infrastructure, like, if you look at the states, there are many areas which are of interest. like water, energy, transport, and everything. So protecting these things, I mean, you need quite very strong solutions. And when I look at the future, like I was mentioning, I see an integration of all these areas, immersive realities, extended realities, whatever. I mean, smart ecosystems, digital twins, and the integration. So all these are going to be used as a factors which can be used to, I mean, develop solutions and mechanisms that are going to defend these systems, because the future is not going to be the traditional security as we see it. It's going to be more something that integrates uh, intelligent approaches and I mean, different kind of technology. Because recently you've seen people do a lot of gaming, but what we don't look at is it's not just gaming and being interested in games. It's how can we detect if we have adversaries in between games? Because this is a platform now even terror groups use, and many dark markets and different areas. So I'm more interested in digging deeper and finding what are the proactive side and what are the reactive sides, and how can we step in if we have to develop solutions which are going to, help us to develop next generation systems. So AI and cybersecurity in the metaverse, what it represents is how can we use these upcoming technologies? Because every day we have something different, every day, and we have new challenges. So we can't keep on using the traditional approaches, because for quite some time, security has just stood up as tradition. Because all you have to do is just sit behind the computer and write some rules and use a very good operating system like Linux and say, nobody can penetrate the firewall. But I think it's changing, because with a lot of AI, machine learning technologies, I think they're becoming more intelligent. So we also need to adopt these approaches and be a step ahead so that we can be able to deter if something happens. So, I mean, the concept is quite old right now. Like we know it's something very immersive and persistent. So it bridges the gap between what is physical and what is digital. So human plays a big role here, because we find the human, I mean, metaverse is just human-centric, because the human just has to interact with the other life. And I think from there, you can socialize, do a lot of things, do business, do some transactions, and send something. One of the key areas which, I mean, I know most of you have explored and seen is uh, blockchain. I mean, when we decentralize things, there are many ways through which we've been able to rely on virtual entities. And I can tell you from experience that there's a time I was trying to investigate more about how the virtual Ponzi scheme work using decentralized approaches. And I think I could see, I tried to get inside, I also got scammed in the process. Then I realized that, yeah, it's very serious on that issue. So the challenge is the growing adoption makes it a target for adversarial activities, because adversaries change their tactics every day. And as researchers or experts, or wherever we want to, I mean, set a trap, we also need to be focused. I mean, we need to act, think, and move like adversaries. Because if, for example, you have an adversary in a system and is trying to put a trap for you, I think you should be able to, I mean, have good steps ahead of that, so that you can detect if it's a trap. One of the things that I usually mention, and which is very critical, is as a researcher, or let's say if you want to act like, let's say, a hacker or someone, you could be hacked in the process without your knowledge. So I think that is always a good process. When you're hacked, I think you are able to know if you can also use the same tactics to penetrate. So, I mean, being a metaverse, one of the things that the metaverse is made of is it has some sub-metaverses. And the main reason it has this is, I mean, we need creativity, continuous content generation. Because if you look at the areas right now of research in many groups or wherever, what you find is there's continuous development of games, I mean, analytics and many fusion of areas which are more pertinent in this area. But one of the things that we need to understand is that nothing changes because the systems are same, the approaches are, I mean, the methods could be different, but the ultimate goal has to be the same. That is, if there is any compromise, so we have some intrusion, so we have systems that, I mean, are very weak. So as researchers, how can we penetrate inside and implement some key solutions or mechanisms which can be able to address some of these challenges? So the characteristics, like we know, is so immersive. I mean, users used to have quite a lot of a closeness. Something is too, you can say, like psychological aspect, and it's hyperspatial temporal and sustainable. We want this platform to be able to support sustainability. I mean, things which are going to be developed and interactions. We don't want them to be just put across, and I think they don't have meaning afterwards. So we want it to be something that can last forever. So, and we envision the metaverse to be something that, I mean, can expand from what it is. So it has to be scalable, and it has to support quite a lot of devices, heterogeneity. So, and this also is the reason why I can say many challenges crop up, because the area like the Internet of Things being supported in the metaverse, it means we must have quite a lot of data which is going to be generated. And every time we have data, I think what we have to agree is that it's beneficial, because we are going to make some decisions from the data, but still on the other side, we need to understand if this data is compromised or if something is inside. So, and that leads to intrinsic flaws. So massive data streams, data streaming, and the projection, I mean, like Ellen mentioned, the projection is when metaverse was, I mean, people started talking about it, people had the projection like the AI algorithms are going to be unfair, maybe, in giving out solutions or content. I think it goes without saying, that's true. Right now with generative aspects, I think we have, I mean, we have diverse opinions, and even we can't trust the AI models more than it was said. Then there's an aspect of pervasive user profiling activities. I think this could be used to also profile users. And in this context, I think it's possible that users could, I mean, malicious users could be able to target some digital identities and be able to use these in a very nefarious approach. Then physical infrastructure, this is also something that I will not be talking more about it, because the physical damage is this one, it lives with us. I mean, we've seen situations whereby we talk about the logical aspects of cybersecurity, but the physical damage is something that happens every day. So I'll not have consideration of it. Then there is a privacy issue. This has been an issue across board. Many laws are focused on how personal information is being used. I mean, like if you look like in Europe, there's quite a lot of talk about the GDPR, General Data Protection. And I think in the US, they have also some few laws that talk about privacy. And what I find more worrying is the human aspect of security. So the effect is as in these systems. This is what you'll be discussing more. So the focus of metaverse, it cuts across different areas. I mean, you could easily look into this and you could find your area that you're researching. I mean, you can see it integrates at some point. So there's ubiquity computing, the AI comes there, then we have blockchain, digital twins, interactivity, networking. So, and you can find it spans across different, like you can see AI, I think the revolution has just been tremendous. Different algorithms, computer visions, natural language processing, machine learning, deep learning, and other areas like reinforcement learning. But the question we have is, how does this affect security? Because what we see there is just a fusion of key technologies. Like blockchain, I can say, very fast. I mean, it picked this, this fusion very fast, and people are able to implement NFTs, smart contracts, use them to generate quite useful stuff. But as you've had in a few years, you've had the rise of cryptocurrency and other things. I think they have been linked to a lot of fraud and many things. Is because how open this surface has been. I mean, it has not been protected to the extent that we would like to. So as you can see, these are different areas, and I mean, you can always argue that even though there's a lot of definitions about what metaverse represents, as we call it Second Life, there are many things. Gaming, many other technologies have been developed on top of this, and they've been successful. But there's been a lot of, I can say, I mean, there've been activities that have affected humans, ranging from could be psychological up to loss of human life, and this is something very important. So then I ask, what may be missing? You can see that. So what may be missing in this? So that's what I wanted to find out when I talk about how do we envision adversaries in Second Life. So what I find missing in this fusion is how can we address, I mean, the loss of security goals? Because if we can't protect all the security goals that we have, then security becomes a challenge. So what I find is security, I mean, this fusion, if you read more articles, what you find is people mention, I bet if you do, I mean, if you do quite a lot of investigation, you find people mention security could be this, security could be this, we could do this, we could do this and this. And a lot of open challenges have been highlighted. But what I'm interested in, what is the main solution to this? How do we develop these, I mean, strategies for us to say that, yes, we have Second Lives, we have gamings, we have this and this, and these areas are more secure because we have strategies in place. This is quite a very open area of research currently that I see is really not explored. People just have tried to mention, but still is open for us. So what do we know about security? This is what we know. We know that threats live among us, and they are catalysts of attacks. And when you have an attack, it's going to exploit a vulnerable point. And once it exploits a vulnerable point, the result is impact. What is the impact? Is the loss of security goals. So you're going to lose confidentiality of information. We are going to lose availability. We're not going to have any the systems or available informations or systems are going to be down, or integrity. The information we have or data that is running within our systems is going to be compromised. So there are going to be a lot of alterations, tampering, modifications. Then we can't say we have it in original form. So even if we are doing some transactions, then it's very hard for me to say that the information I have that's coming from you, it really came from you, because it could be subject to being tapped in between. That happens when, I mean, we have weaker systems. If all this process you see here from threat to impact is successful, then I think it's done. We can't say we have 100% something. So failure is going to lead to what you said: disruption, downtime, loss of data. We're going to have more vulnerabilities that are going to crop up as we continue if we don't develop strong systems. And it's going to be very obvious that adversaries are going to get access. And I mean, if you look at this industry of Second Life and wherever, it quite has a lot of revenue. So something that's going to happen is a loss of revenue, because it's millions. I've seen, you say during COVID, people were able to do concerts and meet in these platforms, and there's a lot of money generated. So in this loss of revenue, it could lead to loss of human life, and I mean, it's going to tamper with systems. And threats to user well-being in immersive environments, because one thing I've seen is that the immersive environments have become like part and parcel of us. We feel more close to these the systems, and when these systems are compromised, I mean, like we said, the future is moving to this direction. Then I think we risk a lot losing quite a lot in our lives. So security is important for us to protect confidential information. I mean, to maintain the security goals, protect confidential information, prevent unauthorized access, and also enforce data privacy, which this is one of the areas which has been talked about by researchers, but not much has been done in privacy. Different methods, have been suggested of privacy preserving and maybe technologies, but still I feel it's really, having control of your data still is very hard because signing user agreements, yes, I don't want my data to be used. Is that all? What if your data is used? How can you be able to tell if someone doesn't tell you, oh, I used your data, or I didn't use your data? So still, I feel like a lot needs to be explored in this. So there's been quite a lot of attacks on these areas, and I have a few sampled cases. And one of it is this prototype that has been developed. I've seen Roblox. Some of you might have heard of this gaming. It's very common. So there's been an identity theft. So there was a hacking that happened on the personal VR classes through phishing, email scams, and authentication loopholes. And you know that leads to a lot of massive data streams. Massive data are collected, and these data are used. They could be used for other things. They could be used for business or illegal activities. So in the long run, you can find some of these crimes are going to be attributed to the user without knowledge, and the user needs to provide proof that they're not the ones who did this. So this leads to quite a lot of loss in revenues and compromise of systems. Still, they could be used as targeted attacks. Then we have OpenSea NFT marketplace, which was hacked. There was a flaw on the smart contracts, or smart contracts, which are written to do some predefined tasks. So all these prototypes which are running in a bunch of spaces. And there is the Oculus helmet hack, which exploited their stolen behaviors. So the biodata was picked up, many biodata, fingerprint, head movements, and whatever. And this was used against, the consent of the owners. These examples, there are quite a lot of these areas. And what researchers have done in these areas, they've just been able to mention traditional security practices which could be used. So like we have traditional security practices, like we're going to prevent authentications, we are going to do integrity, but these spaces are complex. This fusion provides a very complex surface. It's not easy for you to apply traditional security. And like I mentioned with the introduction of AI and other areas, it makes it even more complicated for you to for you to think that you can get inside, write some rules, develop some security prototypes which can solve this. What is needed is, you need to have a lot of touch with these reality environments and, coexist and know how to defend this. All right, so now we move the second part that we look at. We look at the second life adversaries and how this moves. Like we mentioned before, the human world is connected to the digital lives and with the metaverse, with the engine. It is facilitated by all these AR, VR, we have MR, XR, and BCI, for example. These are areas which, factors in all these processes. And like we've seen the fusion, the fusion has quite a lot, including digital twins, blockchain, which has been, at the center of the play. And since we mentioned about the NFTs, non-fungible tokens, the DeFi, decentralized finance, has been at play here because the stock markets have used all these virtual environments to predict the stocks how they're going and, do quite a lot of transactions. So what is used is digital avatars, and based on the virtual environment, some goods are going to be traded here. The economic-wise, these things are happening. You can sit somewhere and use these avatars to do quite some transactions, socialize, move from place to place. And I think this second life is a life that works when you look, when you read or you check further on how they're represented. And using these digital entities, we could socialize, we could say, we could send information, we could transact, we could send, because I know someone who had an NFT, bid an NFT for people people trying to, do some transactions, and he was trying to sell these for some time. So this tells you quite a lot. The value of these commodities and these entities which are being traded along. So this is a basic architecture. And if you look at blockchain, like we mentioned, there's quite a lot that is happening. If you look at the real world, what happens, and the virtual world, for example, blockchain is just a common language of business and technology. So, and it's developed based on hash and timestamp technology. So you can generate cryptographic hash functions for all the processes, and you can create a big loop whereby you're going to kill the centralized entity, so we don't have to transact with someone in the middle, and like killing the old traditional banking systems, and we could have something that depends on person to person, peer to peer. And this is one of the success of these areas. And like you can see, like we know, virtual currencies have been created. For example, we've seen Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other stuff. They've been used to generate all these transaction mechanisms based on distributed ledgers. Well, I won't go much into blockchain. I just mentioned that the areas that have been more successful based on these virtual world could be the NFTs, generation of smart contracts, and DeFi. So if you explore these more, you find that there's quite interesting things to learn when it comes to security and what we need to focus on. And another area has been how we can be able to detect attacks based on digital twins, because in decentralized technologies, one things that we need to mention is blockchain allows us also to distribute all these environments and these technologies. And if we have a mirror of what the physical infrastructure looks like, it's possible for us to discover or to find out things like errors and the potential attackers. That is a projection, but I think more is needed for us to find that. For example, what we see here is a physical IT systems, intelligent systems, and in the right side what we have is a digital twin. So for example, if we have an attacker sitting here and is trying to compromise, some of the connected environment, if we have, let's say we have a drone here that is trying to supply information based on this car, and we have an attacker who's trying also to compromise all these communication. By us having a replica of this, it's very easy for us to be able to track what is happening. Because in the normal case, in traditional security, what you have to do is we could just plant some detection systems, like it could be intrusion, then we could use some data to detect some anomalies without us having to be sure if we have a good accuracy, if it's an intrusion or not. So this one area, virtual spaces, I think will help us maybe narrow down on these areas. So potential security threats, I will not mention each, but I'm going to sample out. So we have authentication and access control, very important. Data management, privacy-related aspects, network, the economical part, the physical and social effects, and governance-related. So there's always a thought from people. People think most of the attacks that are more violent are attacks whereby someone is able to penetrate into your bank account, steal money, or lock your system out. One of the most dangerous attack that people really don't take into account is social engineering. How can I get your information without touching you, without even having any contact? Just psychological. I play with you psychologically and get your information. This is also something that is very prevalent in this area. So authentication, identity theft is one of the ways that they use this. And using this identity, they can impersonate, they can do impersonation, and they could compromise these digital avatars, and it looks like it's you who's talking, but it's me. Then I'm able to get information and even compromise and steal quite a lot of things. Then authentication issues, I think one of the main ways of addressing these countermeasure is to develop strong cryptographic encryption methods, which can deter the external entities from accessing the system. Then data management, I mean, it touches on the integrity aspect. We need to make sure when we're in the second life that we maintain originality of the data. The data we have, it has been in original form. So there's no way that we can allow any alterations or tampering. Mostly, we cannot be able to do this, but I mean, we need to prevent intruders from having access to this. Then the privacy aspects, I mean, data leakage is something that has not been controlled in many areas because we develop strong privacy preserving techniques, but still the data is able to leak. This is also a security threat to the second life, because sometimes when we put our headsets and connect to different environment, I mean, we are inside and we are doing quite a lot of things, but how do we protect our data in these situations? How can we say that we have things going which should be the way they are? I mean, these are areas where people really question whether they need this or not. But I can tell you that's where it's heading in many areas. Then there's the economic sides and the network related. I mean, this one, like we say, the decentralized part solve this, because the traditional ways is we connect these metaverses or whatever to a central point, and this central point gives us information, and this information and that one suffers from single point of failure attacks, because if that one goes down, then I think everything goes down. It is so. I mean, that's why I try to talk about the decentralized life. I mean, the projection is that we just decentralize everything, but if you look at many years back, the situation was like, in future, if we have to decentralize everything, then Second Life is going to be a success. Yeah, it is decentralized right now, but we are seeing quite a lot of threats, and a lot of things are coming in. Then there is threats to personal safety, infrastructure safety, and social effects, like we say, social engineering. It is going to be a big, this is one of the most dangerous attack. Then governance issues. So new laws, I mean, there are very few laws on these things. We just use the normal generic laws to argue that one of these laws can be applied to this. One of the toughest things to conduct, like I mentioned in these areas, is the forensic side. You cannot conduct a digital forensic investigation in Second Life because the laws which applies to data cannot apply to the Second Life, because I mean, when we do a traditional investigation, we just have to seize this device, then do a chain of custody, then do a lot of reconstruction in order for us to be able to prove that this is attributed to you. You are the criminal. Second Life, how do you create an image of Second Life? Very complicated. It's a complex scene. So my thought is that we need to have different kind of laws which could also help the digital forensic investigator in Second Life. All right, the scenario is here right now. How we interact with these environments, first of all, is we have a web, we have a device that using XR glasses. Sometimes you have a head-mounted display, then you have maybe some BCI brain computer interface, then smart headset, a lot of them, haptic gloves, smart wearables. But now this is what happens. An attacker sits wherever he sits. And one of the most successful ways that attackers have been able to manage penetrate is using malware, something that people look at lightly. Malware is dangerous. So an attacker could have malware binaries. They're using malware binaries, given that all these environments are connected. I mean, when you are psychologically sunk into these areas and you are trying to, do your things, maybe interact and do whatever, immersive. So the attacker can launch a malware based on an initial infection. Then what it means is just be able to deploy malware binaries into this environment. And the malware binaries are going to relay information to the attacker. And going to say that these are the open ports, these are the areas that can be explored, and all these systems are not secure. If they're secure, then I think we have less chances. Not we have no chance, we have less chances. So then the secondary injection part, this is when the attacker now launches the exact attack that needs to be directed to the whole ecosystems. And once the attacker does this, the response now to the attacker is done. It's done. So the attacker now here is happy, saying that I have you under control remotely. These are remote injection, remember. So it's game over for you. And the factors, what could the attacker do in this context? It could be hijacking the wearable, and it could be denial of service. This pertinent. I mean, let's deny them service. We can't access anything. I mean, we all know, we've had people say the server is down, right? The server is down today, so we cannot access the system. It's another way of telling you we are under attack. That the server is down is a good word to let you be patient. So unauthorized access, there are poisoning, and let's say other authentication issues in the systems. So we're going to see how to have a countermeasure for this, because this is kind of attacks that are prevalent in the many systems, especially in the States. I mean, development of botnets. This is a case of botnets which could be used to do massive disruptions, massive attacks in different areas. Other example we could see is a cyber attack, whereby it could generate cyber avatars, which are just copies of avatars. Then you can launch them into metaverse, where people are using Second Life. Then based on these attacks, people are going to think that they're using the real avatars, but they're using just the fake avatars to do some transactions. So eventually what happens? When you're compromised, a lot of data is stolen, and I mean, any form of attack or threat could be pushed. Then distributed now service attacks means you can have a lot of these effects it has in this area. So one of the areas that is upcoming, I can say it's already in the market, is generative XR. So AI-driven creation have been adopted and in immersive environments. And what we see here is situations whereby AI is being used to generate intelligent content. I think we can agree that this is a benefit. This is a benefit, and the user experience is becoming more. I mean, it's becoming more reality, and it's becoming okay. Let's not say reality. It's becoming more acceptable, because that is one of the best way we can use AI in these areas. I mean, generate very good content and continuous content. Let's say continuous content, and we have a lot of generations of different kind of avatars and personalizing the environment. But one key area that we need to understand: how can AI also be used as a tool to compromise these systems, and how can we use it as a tool to provide defense in these systems? All right, that leads us to a different way of viewing our scenario. So in the case whereby, let's say the attacker launched a massive attack using malware binaries to our systems are controlled. So what we could do, we're sitting somewhere, I mean, we're trying to defend these adversaries. First is create a repo. I mean, we have to base this on very local service level agreements, so that we're not in trouble. We say that it's privacy invasive, which is true. So we create a readiness repo. And through this readiness repo, we're able to collect some useful information. And based on this information, we can perform some analytics, which can enable us also to be able to detect some anomalies. So in this case, we're going to use AI driven threats for us to detect if we have deep fake avatars, if there's a privacy breach, or if adversarial AI is going to be used, and different other aspects like which are being collected using the biodata and other things. Then applications could be, I mean, we also have the good side that we could use is use it for realistic interactions, and like we say, continuous content generation. This becomes something more interesting. Then we can also use AI as an adaptive security measures. So in this case, dynamically can adjust policies based on evolving threats. I mean, we use AI to detect and protect instead of people using AI to compromise and disrupt services that are running. Then apart from threat detection, then using behavioral approaches, because this is when AI is being used for good purposes. Because the view of AI in this case is like we can view a cop and a bad person. All of them, when they get a tool, which, I mean, they can get a tool that they can use for good purposes and good and bad purposes. So we're acting as cops in this case, using this AI. Then privacy enhancing, so secure data masking and anonymization for user interactions. This is going, I mean, to address the issue of privacy preservation, because what we do is use the traditional methods, privacy preservation, have some strong algorithms, and then we say, yes, we can, we could protect our data, but there's more to that. So, and strategies for securing AI-driven ecosystems, first of all, is when you look at AI models, one of the things is, I mean, we talk about adversarial spaces, because most attackers are able to provide data which has adversarial samples. And these adversarial samples, they end up fooling the AI algorithms, I mean, when they're running. So the good practice here could be for us to secure their AI models, is for us to also train our data based on these models so that they can be able to detect whether there is a potential attack or not. So adversaries is an area which, I mean, has existed, and many AI or machine learning models have been fooled, and they've ended up poisoning a lot of data during the machine learning process. And then what happens? We have a wrong input, then eventually we have a wrong output where the model gives the wrong predictions. Then we have situation awareness, whereby we could also, I mean, the scenario gives an example through which how we can be able to protect this. So this is more traditional, but I mean, what it tells us is we need to be aware of the situation we have. So how do you detect you have an indicator of compromise somewhere? So for example, in the traditional approach, what do? We're going to set up a honeynet server. Then we set up honeypots, and using these honeypots, we can attract intruders or attackers. They can come in and they find, oh, the system is open. Let me try my thing. So based on how they try, then you can tap the information, then learn from the information. Then based on that, then the future potential intruders will try to come in. They find that we have the surface defended and protected, so they cannot come in. All right, so finally, how to protect this? Encrypt and anonymize data. So encryption is the process of generating or developing algorithms to can protect data. And we can do this different ways. You can use a public key encryption or private key. So we can have our data, wherever we have it, encrypt it using a file, then make it more nonsensical. And then we keep our keys private, and then we can be able to access our data. Then also we can do anonymizations, whereby we anonymize data. So only data gets to where it's supposed to get. Only, I mean, if I'm the end user, I only get what I need to see. I don't need to see everything. I mean, that is one area that is not explored more. So finally, we can implement secure boots and firmware updates for devices. I mean, most of the devices we have sometimes, these are old practice of doing patching, and I mean, ensure that we have our devices and firmwares up to date. Otherwise, if they're not up to date, then we are going to have loopholes, and this could be exploited. So thank you. I hope we have room for discussions in this. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my last slide. Yeah.
Some of your camera is off
My camera is off, all right. Sorry.
on the Zoom.
It's on right now?
Yes.
Okay.
it's on that,
Yeah.
All right. Questions, comments?
Have you thought about, the difference between a purely virtual world and like more of like an AR world where there's some real world?
Mm.
So in a pure virtual world,
Oh.
all data, basically all data coming into that world is all virtual, but in an AR world, there's some real world data that comes in. Say like someone pasting a QR code, onto the side of a building.
Yeah.
Versus like, and then of course you're, and then you're also exposed to like all of the internet. Have you thought about that difference between?
Yeah, it's something I've
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I've always something I've been focused on because I had this thought about if we can try to maybe put an argument on how we can filter this data so that we can provide some proof about an attack. Then I thought maybe real data is not virtual data. What if we can be able to create something more synthetic and use it as a proof of concept? Because this world appears to be different, but when you look at the human and the digital world, they are connected. So providing proof, as I said, is a very complex environment because you can't really accurately say that, okay, now I have proof that I can defend the virtual space. Like you said, they're very different worlds. So in context, what you could do, like when you have a mirror, like the digital twin, I think you could provide one surface for that. And if you're able to prove something on this side, then it's sometimes you could map it to the other one. But it's a complex environment to map the two 100%. Yeah.
No, I was thinking about what you said.
Mhm.
So I think since pandemic, we are doing a lot of Zoom or team meeting or other things, right?
Yeah.
Even though we can do virtual background, sometimes we do turn on our background, right? And then if somebody, I was thinking about, if somebody's paying attention, they will know whether you are in your office or you're at home or you're somewhere else, because the behavior will be different. Like
Yeah.
if I'm in my bedroom, I probably won't turn on virtual background, but I won't do that when I'm in my office because I have nothing to hide. Or sometimes I do blurry, even though when I know it's blurry, but I can kind of sense where you are. And then if I don't do any background,
Yeah.
something like that. We don't do any background, we actually know who is in your environment,
Yeah.
right? Whether their children, whether their spouse or however going through, because you're stuck in a place that you don't have open space.
Mhm.
So people could identify where you are about. You are actually out of town,
Yeah.
or even though you pretend you're still in an office. Just like,
Yeah.
I think I'm a small peanuts, nobody's gonna try to track me because there's nothing to break in, but then. Like,
Yeah, but-
forensic investigation,
Yeah.
figure out where people are, what do they do, that's kind of.
Yeah, I mean, geoforensic has been a big issue in the completely virtual space, like you mentioned. I mean, how do you begin? Because forensic begins with collecting information. So, is the information we are collecting? I mean, can it be, because the goal of conducting this, like you mentioned, is for us to do litigation purposes. So, can this be admitted to be really true? I mean, that's a complex area of focus here. Yeah.
So I worked on some very secure systems for DoD
Huh?
as well as financial services industry. Two areas where encryption and the traditional security measures, like control of access rights, things like that, are used extensively. And the big fear in those environments are from insider attacks.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges that in those types of attacks is all the credentials are held by the attacker.
Yeah.
They're deep inside the system.
Yeah.
And you didn't talk about that at all, but an area of pretty rapid development right now is in behavioral security,
Yeah.
looking at the behavior of the entity.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other fears right now is that we're very rapidly having many entities to pass the Turing test. So
Yes.
we can create virtual entities
Mhm.
and have them do things inside of systems with an insider that just gives them credentials,
Yeah.
and then those types of attacks can be incredibly damaging. So what are your thoughts about?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This is something I could have mentioned. Most of us, we normally think, I mean, when we talk about potential attacks, so there's an intrusion, we normally think external attacks contribute to, I mean, the greater context, but I can say 60% of the attacks usually are inside attacks.
It's higher than that. for
Yeah,
the systems. It's around 90%.
yeah. Yeah,
But
previously.
they're very secure.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, previously.
I think
So
quite rightly,
Yeah.
your average plain Jane system.
Yeah,
but
I think
these systems, it's almost always.
Yeah, it is inside attacks actually plays the bigger role on this. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And that's a side effect of having defended against the external attacks.
Yes.
The defense against internal attacks is harder, and so then the numbers turns into 90% of the ones you care about are coming from inside the house.
Yeah, we always more concentrate on building strong firewalls from external attacks. But I usually say the most dangerous person is a disgruntled employee who feels not satisfied.
Well, or a foreign agent. that you
Yeah.
hired, You know,
Yeah.
think about how you hire somebody to put them in a very trusted position.
Yeah,
Interview them, you look at your resume, somebody who purposefully is misdirecting or trying to confuse you is gonna end up in one of those positions.
yeah,
The other great fear is, the last work I did was on unmanned combat air systems, fighter jets essentially with weapons on them that don't have people inside.
Uh-huh.
And I've worked on that for probably around almost 30 years.
Yeah.
At the beginning, there was a great fear of losing control over those machines. So there was no, all of the control systems were discrete control systems where, there's traditional if-then type statements in them. However, in the last probably 10 to 15 years, discovered that those systems are not competitive on the battlefield. That the types of systems that our adversaries are going to use are goal-seeking and risk avoidance systems.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of work to show that, much less code, get a much smarter machine, but you start getting emergent behavior.
Yeah.
You start getting things that you didn't expect. And so the Department of Defense has started to change their policy because of competition. So now we are starting to introduce risk avoidance and goal-seeking software into these machines. And the next step that is blocked now, but I can see competitive forces are going to move that, are machines that develop tactics genetically. So we already do that at DARPA with some of the projects where we have machines that they don't know anything about the adversaries' defenses, and then they go in and they learn about them during the fight, and then they're able to defeat them because you don't have to figure out the tactics ahead of time. The machine figures the tactics out while that goes on. Those types of systems, because of the exponential increase in capability for computing and software, are starting to show up everywhere. So there's lots of science fiction written about super intelligence, and I think we're watching it happen right in front of us.
yeah, super
And so
intelligence.
it's, I think, well beyond what you were showing us.
Yeah,
Threats.
yeah, I've had something I'm sure you've heard of it, that yeah, I mean, that's where we had is super intelligence, but there's an issue with data. I don't know if you heard of that, our data is declining, so we don't have any more data to train. I don't know if you heard of that, Shay. So I was thinking, yeah, how do you address security with this? Because they say compute is growing, but the internet is only one. So we don't have more data for training. So
Well,
how?
the risk may be from the software that's
Yeah,
running your trading programs for the stock exchange that are now doing risk avoidance and fairly soon using genetic algorithms, and you can
Yeah.
kind of see where that could go.
yeah, avoiding risk, I think, will contribute more than relying on traditional approaches. They no longer are going to be tenable, I think. Yeah.
There's an interesting incident. Knight Capital was early in the high frequency trading space. And I don't remember all of the details of the mechanism of failure, but the mechanism of failure ended up being complex. But some of the features of that incident included that there was a flaw in code that was deployed that led to disadvantageous trades being made on behalf of the investors. And it wasn't detected for the early detection. It was ambiguous whether this was disadvantageous or not. When they rolled back the change, that the rollback actually made it worse. And by the time they finally got approvals, there was hesitation to get approvals. But once sort of the decision makers were like, yeah, shut it down, they had already bankrupted themselves with the positions that they'd taken. And I think it featured options trading. I think they had taken calls out on positions and then found
This is like
themselves liable for that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Quite
this is a long time ago. Yeah, but the pieces that are interesting about it is that it was in the early days of high frequency trading, and this introduction of automation and adaptations that the people operating it weren't prepared for. So we'll have incidents of a similar flavor, but with a different challenge in newly emergent behavior for the systems you're describing.
Well, the worry is that the adversary may not be a nation state or people.
Right.
It may be misguided super intelligence that we didn't foresee its emergent behavior. We didn't foresee that it would have some goals that don't exactly line up with what we want them to be.
Yeah.
So the predictions of World War III were very different than World War I and World War II. They're either biological, CRISPR derived, extinction event, or cyber attacks, but the cyber attacks would be not on critical infrastructure the way that we've been defending in the past, but on financial infrastructure. You
Yeah.
wake up one day and everybody's bank account says zero because all money's virtual right now. I think there are some things we should
Yeah,
care about.
Yeah.
The topic is
Yeah.
timely,
I see.
but there are some things that most people aren't thinking about that are happening that are very risky.
Yeah, like I was mentioning about botnets, what you mentioned there. I mean, if you've done research about botnets, there's botnets that are called Zeus, and this was a money stealing botnet. I mean, it stole our money throughout the world. So you mentioned if that is where we're headed in the world war. I mean, flatten every bank account, then these are the approaches which are being used. Right?
Well, with the hot new, all the AI companies, the hot new topic right now, are independent agents or autonomous agents, right?
Yeah.
That are running around on the network. And nobody's saying, gee, maybe we gotta slow down a little bit here.
But actually, historically, we always were like that. But
Okay.
we were not
We're not gonna
100%
change.
sure if this will not destroy the world, and still we
Keep
just
going.
blow it.
Yeah. Yes,
So unfortunately, this is unstoppable.
you're probably right.
I do hold a lot of comfort in knowing how fragile internet scale software systems are. And how dependent they are on humans standing them back up again. Like that's happening continually. And so I think that the autonomous agents have some limits in that some of their emergent behavior will compromise their own infrastructure. And Yeah,
The exponential change curves are.
But for me, I really strongly believe that it's not like super intelligent that we kill us, just we will do it ourselves.
Well, we need to help.
Because the thing is that the using, well, it's like with social media. I recently learned that even gaming is starting to lose against the shows. It's like crazy, yes? People really like spend most of the time watching some stupid short movies.
Yes.
And they don't even game, yeah, like they don't even game. I don't see about true development, like really do nothing, yeah. So we don't need super intelligence, we really don't.
The smart money in the Pentagon is on your side. They believe that the true threat is biological. That we're advancing and putting in hands of pretty much the average person the ability to wipe out all of humanity here. Probably exists today, but widely distributed in the next 10 years.
And this is for.
And all you gotta do is have.
Okay, that's the time we should close the conversation.
Well, but I think your point is, we've got to think about this stuff from a security standpoint.
Yeah,
Other things we can do.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you had a very good point here that you had here.